This story was submitted by Sammy. This story takes place in 2005, post-Katrina New Orleans. Well, actually a suburb called Kenner. I am a woman, and at the time I was in my early 20s, with long brown hair that I always wore in a ponytail. There are times in our lives that we learn something about ourselves and those around us. Sometimes we learn that things are not the way they seem, and our perceptions are wrong, sometimes to the point of putting us in danger and making us ashamed. This is one of those times. In the post-Katrina New Orleans metropolitan area, there was a time where nothing was open, nothing at all. We ate MREs and were terrified of looters. We had signs proclaiming looters would be shot, and then shot again. Cell phone reception was spotty at best, and most people didn't even bother. There were tanks and police departments from around the country helping to protect us from the wild looters we all saw on the news. Then one day, they started to disappear. The tanks left, and soon it was just our local police and sheriff's offices. We felt vulnerable without the National Guard to protect us. It seemed like the locals were alone, faced with this massive effort to rebuild until the storm chasers arrived. This is what we called the massive influx of scores of disreputable, crappy, unlicensed companies who slapped up houses with moldy drywall and did shoddy repairs. They often hired illegals who would come in droves and were hired by these crappy companies. Slowly, daily, stores would reopen, and every time something did, it caused a big stir. People with insurance and FEMA money did their best to piece back their lives together, a bit at a time. Any new or reopened store attracted people with money to spend. Even though we fared better than a lot of the people, we lost a lot of furniture due to roof damage and leaks during Katrina. A few weeks after the storm, a furniture store in a strip mall finally opened, and my husband and I went to try to replace our living room furniture. Happy and optimistic, we lugged our 3 kids, ages 2, 4, and 6, into the store to see what we could buy. After a few minutes of shopping, I was tired of carrying our cranky 2-year-old around, so I decided to go out to the car and grab my stroller. It was one of those bulky kinds that a toddler can lay down and sleep in. I left my kids with my husband and went to the parking lot. We were parked near the back of the lot, and I noticed a few of Hispanic men, probably contractor types, a few spaces down from where we were parked, leaning against a truck, talking to another Hispanic man inside of another truck parked directly in front of the other. Both trucks' windows were facing each other. It wasn't super unusual to see them at the back of the lot, since they were often hanging around waiting for people to pick them up to do work. But I did think it was a little late in the afternoon for them to be there. But work waits for no man, right? I admired how hard they seemed to work, always ready to take on a new job. I made it to the car and unlocked the trunk. I started wrestling the giant stroller out of the trunk, and I could hear them talking in Spanish. No biggie. I smiled and waved at them, and they all waved back. Then I noticed they were drinking. They must have had a long day. I finally got the stroller out and opened it and headed to the store and plopped my purse on the fabric top of the stroller. I was headed back to the store when assorted crap started falling out of my purse, and I chased it around the lot and tossed it back into my purse, irritated. That is when I got the feeling that someone was looking at me. I felt like I was in danger. My heart sped up, and my palms got damp. When I looked up, I noticed 2 African American men in their 20s walking in front of the strip mall, walking towards the door of the furniture store. One of them was wearing a white tank top and saggy khaki shorts. I could see his large diamond earrings shining in the sun. Mentally, I rolled my eyes at his sagging shorts and folded the back of my stroller to cover my purse. I noticed the other one had his green hat on sideways, and he was wearing a green t-shirt with long shorts the exact shade of his shirt. I thought to myself, thugs, yay! I thought maybe I could get into the store before they passed. As I walked towards the store, I noticed them watching me closely, and they stopped walking. They looked around the lot, scanning it. My heart thundered in my chest. I was still 30 or so parking spaces from the door, and I could feel trouble. They said something to each other quickly, and Tank Top nodded his head. They headed towards me, and I was nearly in panic mode. It felt like my legs were taffy. I stopped walking and gripped my stroller, deciding that maybe I should run, when I heard a cough behind me. I could tell they were still looking at me and were walking more quickly to me. The tank top one said, "On the right!" Then, they were running towards me and I started to panic. I wanted to scream. I opened my mouth to scream, but my head snapped backwards as someone jerked my ponytail and I started falling backwards. I saw a flash of green on one side of me, and Tank Top grabbed me and pulled me forward with his arms wrapped around me. He fell backwards, and I fell on top of him. I remembered noticing he smelled like polo, and was thinking Mr. Green should probably be the one wearing polo. Tank had his hand cradling my head, and snarled, "Motherfucker," as he plopped me gently on the ground, and then stood up. Then Tank Top and Mr. Greenclothes were fighting with a couple of Hispanics from the back of the lot. I just could not believe what I was seeing. I didn't understand why they were fighting, or who had pulled my hair. My scalp hurt, and I reached up to rub it. I heard another round of motherfuckers, and heard a whistle and a honk. Then I noticed Tank Top was bleeding on his shoulder, and Mr. Green was bleeding from his knee. However, his hat was still perfectly sideways on his head. The Hispanics near the trucks were piling in the back, and the trucks took off. I could hear myself breathing, and my heart beat in my ears. I wanted to get up, but I couldn't. Tank Top and Mr. Greenclothes walked back over to me, and I flinched. I don't know what I was expecting, but these guys were taller than me. I'm 5'3", and they were around 5'10". I watched the muscles flexing in their arms, and I was scared. I could see the pulse in Tank Top's neck, and he looked angry. Tank Top grabbed me and stood me on my feet like I was a doll, and I staggered sideways. Mr. Greenclothes began picking up my stroller and purse and asked me if I was okay. Before I could do more than nod, the Kenner Police Department showed up, and they told Tank Top and Greenclothes to get away from me. There was a flurry of activity, and I got whisked inside, and they sat me on an ugly plastic black sofa and asked me what had happened. I told them what had happened, and told them that my head hurt. A little while later, the police explained to me what I didn't see. As I was fiddling with my car in the stroller, the guy in the tank top and the guy in the green clothes noticed some of the other men walking towards me from the trucks, one at the back and one on either side. When I started getting closer to the store, the 3 men from the trucks picked up speed. When Tank and Green saw them heading towards me, they made the move to intercept them. One of the men, the one on the left side of me, grabbed my ponytail in an attempt to throw me down, probably to take my purse. When Tank and Green arrived, there was a fight, and the men in the truck left, probably not wanting to draw attention. The security cameras confirmed this story and recorded Texas tags on one of the trucks. There had been reports of strong-armed robbery in the area recently, where people were beaten for their possessions or money. I started to cry. I was so ashamed for thinking that they were thugs, and I still am. They saved me from injury, and saved me from losing the little money we had to replace what we had lost in the storm. They were both bloody, and I only had a sore scalp. They risked so much to protect me, and I didn't understand why. My husband thanked them, and asked them why they stepped in. Tank said, We could see she was a mama, and you know around here you don't mess with people's mamas. Green then said, you could see those guys were up to no good. We tried to give them money as a reward, but they didn't take it. I hugged them both goodbye, and Mr. Greenclothes said, you've got pretty kids, and Tank Top said, you be more careful, mama. I thought of how close I came to being robbed or beaten, maybe both, or maybe even worse. I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Tank Top and Mr. Greenclothes, my unlikely heroes. This story was submitted by Kaitlyn. I am a tall 18-year-old woman, and I live in Montana. Recently it has snowed quite a bit, which has left our walkways covered in ice and snow. I was home alone because my parents and sisters were stuck at my grandpa's due to the bad road conditions. I was sleeping on the couch when my dog started barking at our front door. I walked over to the door and could hear a shovel scraping across the concrete pathway outside. It was 1:30 in the morning, and some random person was shoveling the pathway in front of my house. Me being dumb, I opened the door to ask the person what they were doing. I asked, do you realize it's 1 a.m.? Why are you in my front yard? A man responded in a very deep voice.
I didn't want such a beautiful girl to have to do it and risk falling.
I took a step back and said, my dad or boyfriend will do it in the morning, but thank you. Please get off of my property now. He dropped the shovel and stood straight up. He seemed to be around 6'4" and very well built. His voice was terrifying when he said,
They won't be here in the morning. I know you're alone.
I just stood there frozen, shocked by what he said, and afraid of what he would do. I thought if I acted normal and had a casual conversation, he wouldn't try anything. I asked him questions about who he was and why he felt the need to shovel my property this late at night. After talking to him for 10 minutes, I found out he was a man that lived down the street from me, and he's 40-something years old. He then tried asking me out multiple times. After finding all this out, and refusing his requests, I told him that I was going back to bed, and thanked him for shoveling my pathway. Then I shut the door, and I called the police. They asked the man to return to his home, and an officer sat in front of my house until my boyfriend came to pick me up. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. If you would like a chance to have your story featured in an upcoming video, make sure you read the description on information on how to submit your story. Now, before I get into my thoughts on the stories, I would like to point out that the contest is not over, and please do not post your answers below. As I've stated before, I will let you know when it's over. Make sure to keep your guesses to yourself, so that way you have a better chance of winning.
F.
Now for the first story. I think that this is a great example of not judging a book by its cover. Obviously we're talking about a person and the cover being their clothes, but it goes along the same lines. I would have to agree with you that I don't agree in the sagging pants, but clothes are a way for people to express themselves, and if they want their pants to hang down to their ass and they can barely run, hey, that's them. I'm not having to wear their clothes, I could care less. I think that you got very lucky that they were actually paying attention, because while you were paying attention to clothes, they noticed the real dangers. I'm very happy you had two awesome people around to help you out of that situation. Otherwise, you and your family would have been really hurting for cash, as well as the emotional damage that it would have caused. Regardless, I'm happy you got out of the situation okay, and big props to those two guys. Truly heroes. Now for the second story. I'm not sure if some people would consider it scary or creepy. I just thought it was a little weird that someone was outside someone else's door at 1:30 in the morning shoveling their snow, even regardless of the ages. But even finding out the age difference and the fact that he knew she was alone, I thought that added a little something extra. I think this situation was handled perfectly. He very well could have just been a nice neighbor, but you never know. And the fact that the police showed up and told him to go home shows that you weren't afraid to notify the authorities, and now it's recorded, so if anything does happen, you have something as a record to file some kind of restraining order. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I'll catch you in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.